This is Jeffrey Jones, also known as Triple J, coming to you with the Community Podcast. What we say community is only common unity. That is the tie between you and I. The tie for all, the tie that binds us, the tie that makes us, the tie that makes us whole. Thank you for being here with us for this common unity. So, those type things like that. Tupac was able to navigate those waters in a way that most people couldn't. And he navigated it so well that, when he got to Death Row was out of control. Most people don't understand that. With Death Row, you had Crips and Bloods in the same building. But that show you what green do. Because it's supposed to be the blue and the red. That's what my loyalty is. That's what my blood is. But when that green was involved, that money, they put that aside.
Yeah, you're right.
You know what I mean? Because now it's time to make money. But when you look at Tupac coming out of one of the worst correctional facilities in the country, he was up there in Dannemora in Clinton Correctional Facility. Clinton is crazy. It's like right near the Canadian border. They put you so far up there that the people can't come see you. And it's got like 40-foot walls. It looks like an old castle almost. And it's isolated and it's very violent. I mean, people get stabbed in there every day. And to put Tupac in that environment and then have somebody like Suge Knight come and say, hey, I can get you out of here. You know what I mean? That would be very tempting. I don't care who you are. To say I can get you out of this environment and get you to making money again, put money in your pocket. Because I know Tupac was smart enough to realize that he was making a deal with the devil.
Absolutely.
He was smart enough to realize it, but do I fight all these devils in here? Or do I get out and I only gotta watch this devil? You know what I mean? So he went with the program, and a lot of people think that was Suge's money that got him out. It wasn't. It wasn't Death Row's money. It was the record label that owned Death Row. So people don't realize that there was another level above them, and that's where the money came from. Jerry Levine and all of those guys. So once Tupac is out, he goes to Kelly, and he's showing them a work ethic that they've never seen before. Because they've never seen that. They're used to being in the studio, getting high all day, may lay a track or two while we doing it. And that's how they do. The only person working hard was really Dre. But now Dre's got somebody in the studio that rivals him. And this guy's putting out hit after hit, which is what, he would just put out hit after hit. And he got so popular once he got out, in the way that he was, the trajectory that he took Death Row in, that Suge Knight knew, that's my cash cow. And if ever I lose him, we're not gonna be the same. And individuals don't realize that he only had a 3-album deal with them. That's it. So, once that 3-album deal was over, he was intent on starting his own label.
That Machiavelli album was it.
Yeah. And people don't understand, if Suge is looking at that, knowing when that man walked, my money walked, that's gonna make that environment even more dangerous.
Yeah. And I think, they definitely alluded to that in the documentary. And even Snoop, I think, spoke about it, I think there were even threats. I think even, it sounded like that Suge even made to Tupac, not necessarily saying he would take his life, but, just like, hey, that ain't right, we ain't gonna let you go. Like, you don't just get to walk away. We know what that language is. We know what that language is. Yeah, we know what that language is. So I think, like you said, I think he counted the cost and thought, like, hey, Clinton Mass, it's crazy, man. You got the guards, I can be out living luxury. So he wasn't concerned about, is this in my name? Is that in my name? Oh, I get to sleep in this mansion. You say it's mine, you say this car is mine or whatever. I get to move funds over here, and I'm traveling and I'm getting bigger, and you know what I'm saying? So I think in the midst of that, I think he was trying to appease, so many people. But at the same time, the heart of him and who he was as a human being, I think was never really comfortable. I remember listening to, I don't remember if it was on a documentary or something else, but some of his close people were saying, like, listen to him laugh. it's orchestrated. It's not a natural. It's like
It's not
you know
him
that
anymore.
like that. It's like no. He's playing a character, you know, and he's doing what he has to do, and he's loyal because again, like you said, everybody forgot about me. You know, nobody trying to put all the celebrities I know, they ain't trying to put up $1 million or, you know, whatever like that. And here comes Suge. So what am I going to do? I'm going to be loyal to Suge, you know, because at the end of the day, I was in jail and he came and got me. So I may not agree with everything he's doing, but you know what I'm saying? That's my guy. So, and I think, you know, with Suge and them and stuff with that, you know, just egging on the East West Coast, it's like, oh man, bump them. And, you know, and I think Pac really felt like, you know, hey, I'm going to be that soldier. And it's like, y'all let me get shot or whatever happened. And he did that. And so, and it's amazing when you listen to, even in the documentary where there's an audio where they play where he's I think he leaves a message for his mom or he's recording something and he says, you know, if I die, like I'm fine, I'm not happy here. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and even in I Ain't Mad at You, you know, he was, the character that he was talking about, he said, you know, the guy was locked up and he said, was shedding tears, mama ain't happy here, with Blue Tribe and more smiles for a couple of years, you know, and just, you know, he has songs like Thug's Mansion where he talks about, you know, wanting to commit suicide, but when he held the gun, all you see was his mother's eyes and, you know, things like that and wanted to go on. But, you know, so in some weird way, same thing with Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, where when they died, there was probably a sense of peace on some level because it's like, man, the stress on your body, worrying about, and you know, as a man and anybody that loves their family and loves people around them, you know, it's hard enough thinking about your own life, but when you think about your family, that's what really gets you stressed, you know. So if you're speaking any type of truth to power and your family is being threatened, that's the thing that'll drive you crazy. You know, you is just like, all right, man, if I go, you know, oh man, it would suck, but all right, but you got kids, you got wife, you got, you know what I'm saying? So that had to be tough on Pac, just like it had to be tough on Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and those other Medgar Evers before it happened. He had got many threats before, you know, and he comes and gets shot in his driveway, man, in front of his wife and kids, you know. So that had to be tough. And knowing that, again, they could get away with it. This ain't, it's not 2023 where it's a little harder, you know. And so, man, just understanding. So now, even after watching the documentary, when I go back and listen to his music, it's like, oh, I understand him on another level now. I can. He's humanized on another level. I can empathize on a deeper level. And I've always been like the biggest Tupac fan. He's always been my favorite since I was a child. So, but now, and any documentary that came out, any project, any album, any book, whatever, I'm looking at it, reading it, whatever, because I just love Tupac that much. So to hear, to see that, and even to see like somebody like Kendrick Lamar, you know, when you listen to his, you know, the positivity that he puts in music, and you listen to how Tupac was his biggest influence and how he was at the California Love set. And it's almost like that torch was passed, and now Kendrick is basically the king of California now, the king of the industry in some ways. And knowing that's a direct influence from Tupac, you know, so much that he did a whole album, To Pimp a Butterfly, that was based on an interview of him pretending he's interviewing Tupac. You know what I'm saying? And stuff like that. So it just shows you that level of impact that Tupac had, you know. And like you said, going to death row, you know, and you know, it's just like, and then speaking, you know, he was speaking so much about death and things like you're bringing that reality. You know, you're talking about enemies and things like that. You're feeding into the narrative already. The media is one thing. They're going to do their job and feed into and push narratives. But it's like you're creating that even more. And I think there was a side of him, a huge side of him that was just ready to be like, look, I'm going to get this album out. I'm done. I'm going to go super positive. I'm going to be super militant. And, you know, I got the fame and the notoriety now. So now I can really take this to another level and we can start dealing with our black people for real. And the powers that be was like, nah.
Not gonna let it happen. And that's always been a part of our society, is to make sure that there are no black messiahs that people rally around. They have to make sure that doesn't happen one way or another. And you think about the healing process that most likely would have come about had Tupac been able to get away from that environment and start his own. I'm sure it would have been so much more positive and he would have been able to do so many more positive things, not having to answer to individuals that were in that life. And it's amazing, once again, we talk about law enforcement, and there was an earlier documentary, and in this one I looked at it and I watched it, and there's a gentleman named Keefe D. Keefe D is related to Orlando Anderson. Orlando Anderson is the man who Tupac and his pals from Death Row stomped a man out after they were leaving the Mike Tyson fight, and everybody says it was Orlando Anderson that shot Tupac, and more than likely that's the case. Even his uncle Keefe D says, his uncle says it, but his uncle, I think, leaves some things out as well. Keefe was a known gangster, and he was big time, but he leaves some things out as well, because there was also some law enforcement involved in that, as well as law enforcement involved in the Biggie fiasco.
Right.
But if you notice, none of those individuals were ever brought to light. And some of them, the bodyguards from Death Row and people, were even convicted of bank robbery. So you got police officers acting as bodyguards, robbing banks, hanging out with Death Row. You can't put nothing past people like that.
Right.
You can't put nothing past people like that. And that's why I say, I look at Pac, and Pac was an astute individual. So I know he saw what was around him, but it was too many moving pieces. You can't see them all if you're isolated and you got all these people around you who are together plotting at the same time.
Right. And that's true. And, going back to the fight, Mike Tyson, and that fight ended early, and then just the way it happened, I think he knocked out Bruce the first round. And I remember as a kid hearing that, and then, I remember even, I think it was Kurt Loder. I think that's the first time I heard it. I think it was MTV News, Breaking News or something. And, I think it was Kurt Loder that came on there and was like, Tupac Shakur after he's been shot again. I'm like, dang. And I think the video, I can't remember if it dropped right before that happened or right. I think it dropped after. I'm not sure. It might have dropped before. I think it dropped in September. But he was killed. I think he was shot on the 7th and died on the 13th or whatever, because I think they pulled the plug. But he was basically dead, and after he got shot, like I think they said within the next few days, machine was just keeping him alive at that point. But I remember as a kid even seeing that and being impacted, by that. And I think that was the first time as a kid that a death of somebody that I didn't know really affected me. You know what I'm saying? Because I really, really enjoyed Tupac's music, and seeing, getting older and watching documentary and interviews and people saying what they said, and even the bodyguard, I think it was Frank something, Tupac, and he was supposed to go. I mean, so many things happened. Pac had his vest, and then Suge said don't wear it, supposedly, and he left it behind, and then the bodyguard was gonna ride with them in the back seat, and they were like, nah, won't you? You know what I'm saying? So many
different cars.
Yeah. So many things happened, and Marlon Wayans was out there, and he was almost gonna ride or was gonna follow behind, but then he waited. Excuse me. There's just a lot of things that happen, But like you said, so many moving pieces, and just you're hanging with the wrong crowd. And even as Auntie said on the documentary that when she was watching the footage, it's like, man, like who is this? Like Tupac, like what made you think that was okay? Like what? You're smarter than that. Like,
right.
You know what I'm saying? But you're making a really foolish decision, and you're with your homies, and you're trying to prove a point. And again, where's your fall guy if that's going to even happen, to be like, nah, Pac, where's the people protecting him?
Right.
Why is he leading? Somebody should have grabbed him. There's people, I've heard Kenny the Jet Smith in basketball, and Stephen A. Smith and other people say, like, man, when they were, playing basketball or doing things, and people knew they had a gift and they were going to make a way, OGs would be like, nah, homie, like, what you doing? Like, this ain't for you. Like, they would try to put hands on, like, what you mean you're not about to partake? You got a future, So where were the people that, out of all the people, Pac's running, like, no, get Pac out of here. Like, what are you doing? And then you would at least think, okay, this is a rival gang. So Pac just stomped him out. Pac's here. The last thing I'm gonna do is tell you to leave a vest. Like, it doesn't
Don't put
make,
your vest on.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. It's like, hey man, we got undercover police and hired police on the team. Why wouldn't we arm up even more and be like, all right, man, we just gotta lay low. We ain't in LA or whatever. We in Vegas, different spot. It's just so many things that don't really that don't really add up, or there was something off. This wasn't just all coincidence, random events. There was some conspiring or something behind the scenes, something, but we don't know exactly what that is. But there was definitely something. All roads point to it, even the auntie, everybody, So, just looking at, man, it's just so unfortunate. And then, his mom talking about having to let him go, and her strength in the midst of it, and saying, hey, my son has always been a free spirit. And she basically talked about not wanting to be selfish at that moment, knowing that her son he's gone, and not wanting to prolong it and wanting to let him actually be free. Like, cause his body was there, but his mind, he's not coming back. Like they said even if he would have lived, it was so much damage done, and imagine if he just had his vest on, he might have been okay. But, seeing Afeni and live and then now she's already had all this trauma. Now she's lost her only son. She's got a daughter left. And having to live that out, that violence, having all the violence, we saw earlier where the Malcolm X bodyguard that tried to resuscitate him after he got shot was actually an informant that was part of setting him up.
Yes.
And he's acting like he's trying to save his life. This is the same man that was undercover in the Panthers and set up Tupac's mom, right?
Absolutely.
And she dealt with that trauma and people dying and stuff to see her own son get killed, get gunned down like a dog, and or even worse than a dog, But it's just interesting, you see how the world works and things come full circle. And then she had to live with that, and then she needs to, continue to be an activist and write and be a factor in the Black community and stand strong. And even Tupac, he just got I think Hollywood Walk of Fame finally, long overdue, with his sister. I don't want to butcher her name. I know it starts with that, but his sister ended up accepting that on his behalf. And he's written songs about her and everything. A lot of people don't realize Pac had a sister, and Pac was dating. I don't know if he was engaged, but I know he was dating Quincy Jones' daughter, Kadada. And so, man, it's just like, man, young life cut short. But like he said, his music would always live on. And like you said, when he got out of prison, the work ethic that he had, it was like he knew he wasn't gonna be here long, man. He got albums and albums and so much content in a year and a half span. Because I think he got out. Was it? I think it was like January '96.
Sounds right.
Yeah, right there. So he wasn't even out a full year before he got killed, and he was recording there. He had the Machiavelli album, the All Eyes on Me, which is a double album. He had more stuff coming on because they released I think it was Are You Still Down or whatever album, and he had so much unwritten stuff even from before, or unrecorded or unreleased stuff. So man, it's just a beautiful life, but at the same time, you see this was still such a young man, and even though he was intelligent, he wasn't without flaws, and he lacked wisdom in areas just like a lot of us lack wisdom, and his unfortunately ended his life, and that's just going back to, like you said, that environment that we surround ourselves with, and you have to, certain choices have certain consequences, good or bad, and so it's just an unfortunate thing, man.
And one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is, I can look at his mother's story, Afeni, and she was not into drugs or anything like that before the incident happened where they tried to lock her up. Mm-hmm. And people don't understand that after she beat that case, she worked. Mm-hmm. She was out in the community as an activist, mm-hmm. helping those who were homeless find places to stay. Mm-hmm. She was doing all kind of work that was good in the community, but they had to move constantly because everywhere she went, people would find out who she was, mm-hmm. and once they did, then the threats would begin. Mm-hmm. So, what really drove her to the drugs was despair, mm-hmm. and that happens a lot in the community. People don't understand that right. A lot of the folks who abuse drugs in our community are not doing it just because they want to get high. Mm-hmm. It's a way for them to try and escape the pressures that they are under, and then before they know it, they're hooked on this substance. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened with her. Right. She's not a bad person. She's not a person who just say, I'm not going to worry about my family. I like the drugs better. That's not how that went. Mm-hmm. But she was under so much pressure from outside influences who still wanted to destroy her,
Right.
especially after she beat the government. That you know, it just took over her life.
Yeah.
And I just have to, you know, say that you look all over our communities, and we have folks like that right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, you know, a lot of that is, you know, people need a sense of therapy, a sense of relief, just a break, because it's so hard. And a lot of times people don't realize sometimes the decisions people make, it's literally a life or death. It's literally, okay, I'm either going to take my life or I'm going to suppress it. You know, somehow it's that bad. So you don't know what people are going through. So people would say, oh, how could you get on crack cocaine? It's not like she just decided to throw her life away one day and not be a good mom. It's literally fight or flight at times.
Yeah.
And unless you're in those situations and you grow up, just like people that have been to war, you know, things like that, it's hard to really speak on that unless you've been in those type of environments. So if you don't come from the ghetto and you're not used to gunshots and you're not used to that level of trauma and people dying every day to where it's almost normalized, it's like, oh, so-and-so died today. Oh yeah, dang, another one. It just becomes a part of your life. You don't know that it's not normal. You know,
you're absolutely right. And you're right. You can't really. You can share it with individuals who are not from that environment, but they won't truly understand unless they've lived it.
Right.
You know, you might think you understand, but unless you've lived it, you don't truly understand.
Right. Yeah, those are real situations and provide just different levels of trauma, man. So, you know, Tupac music, it will always live on. He's still influencing people today, you know, and that just shows, even like with us doing this or whatever, you never know. For those of you out there, you never know who your music or podcast or, you know, just your generosity, who you might influence, who you might encourage. You know, there were people that encouraged Malcolm X that never expected him to be, you know, Malcolm X. They just were being a blessing, and that helped him become who he was, who he became. Same thing with Martin Luther King and other people. And so it's just like, just being good to people, you know, and using your platform, whatever it is, you know, social media, don't consider it, don't despise small beginnings, you know, because you just never know who you're going to impact, and be faithful to who you are, you know. And so I think that with Pac, that's something we can learn. At the end of the day, here was a man who pursued his dreams. His passion was to act and to do movies and to record, and that's ultimately what he did. He made some foolish decisions along the way, and you know, things happened that he shouldn't have done, and maybe he should have done. But at the end of the day, it was a human being, you know what I'm saying, an image bearer of God that did the best he could for what he knew.
Absolutely.
You know?
And I think he's one individual who did maximize his potential. Now, he would have only gotten better over time, but for that point in time in his life, I think he had maximized his potential.
Right.
And you know, when you look at that hierarchy of needs, you look at what Maslow had laid out. You know, you start at the bottom of the pyramid, and that's those needs like food, water, shelter.
Right.
And then once you've got that, you can move to the next level. You know, that's belongingness, and then you can move to the next level and finally end up at the very top of the pyramid, which they like to call self-actualization, which is truly just being the best person you can possibly be.
Yeah,
and I think he had pretty much got there.
Absolutely.
I would have loved to see what he would have been able to do had he
got out of that situation.
Yes.
And that's the thing, people, even with Snoop Dogg, like a lot of people don't realize Master P saved his life. Like he really, you know, he got out of his deal, and they weren't happy about that. It wasn't, you know, what Master P was able, I mean, they were gangsters too. You know, they came from the war down in New Orleans.
Yeah.
There's no joke. That ain't, you know, if they say count the cost before you go to a war. That's a war. Even if you win that war, it's gonna be it's gonna hurt. So I don't really know. So it's like, you know, and Master P had also, you know, he had did some stuff. You know, he was touring out there with the West Coast, and I believe he was. I think at one point he was opening for Tupac or doing something like that. So he has ties to the West Coast as well, but ended up, you know, that was one of the biggest things, even though Snoop's career was not huge on No Limit, but he really saved his life and allowed him to become the Snoop you see today, you know, the mogul and the legend and things like that, man. So, you know, shout out to Master P for that, but that's a whole nother story, but, you know.
Maybe we'll get a chance to do that one day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I like Master P's work. Percy came a long way.
Yeah, he did. They had a good documentary on, I think on BET. I think it was 3 or 4 parts.
No Limit.
Yeah, that was pretty good too. Yep.
Well, I tell you folks, it's been great here having you with us today, and thank you for coming and sitting with me today and having a chance to talk with the audience. And I'd just like to say thank you once again for being here with us. Have a blessed day.
Peace.
Hello, everyone. This is Sandra Jones, co-founder of Community Podcasts. I'd like to say thank you to all our listeners and viewers. We're asking for positive vibes only. Thank you and have a great day.